Many years ago, in the little village of Kudugu in Burkina Faso, a small boy named Issouf Zongo grew up in a mud house with his widowed mother and 3 elder brothers. Life in the village was hard, and unlike his brothers, who were focused, hardworking and determined to escape poverty, Issouf was the one who always found the fastest shortcuts, even if they led him straight into trouble. His elder brother Alassane Zongo was the pride of the family. Everyone in Kudugu admired him because he was brilliant, disciplined and hardworking. He left the village early, moved to Ouagadougou, and within a few years, he built a successful business importing spare parts from Ivory Coast. And it was through him that the Zongo name became associated with wealth. But while Alassane carried the family's dignity on his shoulders, Issouf carried only his appetite for enjoyment. Years later, when Alassane invited the family to join him in Ouagadougou, Issouf saw an opportunity to change his life forever. He left the village with just 1 pair of trousers and 2 old shirts. But when he arrived in the city and saw Alassane's new life, the big house, the shiny cars, the air conditioners in every room, and the kitchen always full of food, something clicked inside him. From that day, Issouf made a silent vow to himself. He would never be seen as the poor boy from Kudugu again. At first, it seemed harmless. Alassane trusted him completely and gave him a small job of managing errands, taking cars to the mechanic, buying supplies and delivering goods to customers. But Issouf's sharp eyes noticed something else. He noticed the way women in the city looked at Alassane whenever he drove past in his black Toyota Prado, the way they admired his gold wristwatch, and the way they laughed too hard whenever he spoke in French at restaurants. And so, one evening, Issouf sat at the veranda with his second brother Umaru and declared boldly, "If women like Alassane because of these things, then I will become like Alassane." Umaru laughed, shook his head and told him not to disgrace the family, but Issouf ignored him. From that night, he began his transformation. He secretly borrowed one of Alassane's silk shirts, a shiny silver wristwatch, and one of his expensive perfumes that smelled like rich man money. Then he went into town practicing the slow, deliberate walk he had seen Alassane use whenever he visited the bank. The first time he tried it, the perfume made his head spin and the tight shirt squeezed his ribs. But when 2 young ladies giggled as he passed by, Issouf knew he was on the right track. Over time, he mastered the art of pretending to be a big man. He learned to speak slowly but confidently. He learned how to sprinkle little French phrases into his sentences and to wear sunglasses even at night. Whenever he borrowed Alassane's car, he lowered the window, adjusted the steering carefully and drove slowly through busy streets so that everyone could see him. By the time he turned 28, Issouf had built a new identity in Ouagadougou as the charming, wealthy bachelor from the famous Zongo family. And that was how Awa Sawadogo entered his life. Awa was a beautiful young woman from a respectable family. She was raised by her mother Fanta, who had one dream: to see her daughter marry rich. Awa had grown up hearing her mother say, "My daughter, poverty is not your portion. If a man does not drive a good car, don't even greet him." As a result, by the time he turned 24, Awa believed deeply that her happiness depended on finding a man who would provide the soft life her mother never had. She met Issouf on a Saturday evening at a mutual friend's birthday party. That day, Issouf had gone all out. He borrowed Alassane's white Lexus SUV, sprayed himself with the last drop of Alassane's imported perfume, and wore an expensive designer shirt, carefully chosen from Alassane's closet, of course. When he walked into the venue, the lights caught the gold-plated watch on his wrist, and his confident smile completed the charade. Awa noticed him instantly but pretended not to. She was sitting at a corner table with her best friend Miriam, taking orange juice and scrolling through her phone when Miriam nudged her. Awa, see that tall fine man coming in. Look at his watch. Look at that car key. That's his money walking on two legs. Yusuf spotted Awa at the same moment. He had learned a powerful lesson about city women, which was to approach them slowly, smile calmly, and speak softly because the illusion of wealth begins with confidence and not cash. He walked over, bent slightly, and said in smooth French, "Bonsoir, mademoiselle. You are the most elegant woman in this room tonight." Awa blushed so hard that she forgot to breathe for 3 seconds. Miriam kicked her under the table and whispered, "Say something before this rich man walks away." And that was how it started. From that night, Yusuf turned on his full magic. He took Awa out for expensive dinners. Well, always at Alassane expense. Showed up in different cars, none of which were his. He talked about international contracts and import deals that only existed in his imagination, but Awa believed every word. Within weeks, she was convinced she had found the husband of her dreams, but Miriam was more logical, so she asked Awa questions like, "Have you seen his house? Does he have staff? Why does he always say I will call you back after 10 minutes whenever you ask about business?" But Awa waved off her doubts. "Miriam, rich men are always busy. Stop thinking like a villager." Yusuf continued this way for months until one evening when he took Awa to an expensive dinner at a restaurant. He knelt down dramatically, pulled out a small velvet box containing a shiny diamond ring and smiled. "Awa, ma chérie, will you make me the happiest man in Burkina Faso and be my wife?" Awa screamed for joy and nodded, "Yes." And just like that, the countdown to the wedding of the year began that very moment. Awa's mother, Fanta, nearly fainted from excitement when she heard the news. She clapped her hands hard and screamed for the entire compound to hear. "My daughter has done it. We are entering the Zongo dynasty. No more poverty in this family. God, I told you I am your favorite child." From that day, Fanta became the unofficial wedding project manager. Personal hype woman and financial consultant all rolled into one. She called every distant cousin, every neighbor, and every secondary school teacher who ever scolded Awa just to tell them, "My daughter is marrying money itself. You people should come and eat wealth that day." Meanwhile, Yusuf, the self-proclaimed wealthy businessman, was secretly panicking because he had no savings, not even enough to buy the engagement ring he proposed with. The ring actually belonged to Umaru's ex-girlfriend, who returned it after breaking up with him. Yusuf found it in his brother's drawer, polished it and pretended it was custom made in Paris. However, Yusuf was cunning. He knew Alassane loved family reputation more than anything else. So, one evening, he sat dramatically at the dining table and bowed his head like a boy wrongly accused. "Grand frère, please, I beg you, I have finally found the woman of my dreams, but I don't want to disgrace our family name. If this wedding looks cheap, people will laugh at all of us." Alassane sighed deeply and said, "Yusuf, you have no job. You have no savings, and yet you want to marry. Do you even think about tomorrow?" Yusuf sniffed loudly as if he was crying. "Tomorrow will take care of itself when you have a good wife. Please, help me just this one time. I promise after the wedding I will change." Alassane stared at him for a long time, shook his head, muttered something about foolish younger brothers, and finally agreed to sponsor the wedding just to avoid embarrassment. And so the preparations began. Initially, Awa wanted an elegant modern wedding, but her mother wanted a traditional display of wealth that would make the ancestors clap from the grave. So finally, they settled somewhere in the middle. They would have a 3-day event, complete with a traditional ceremony, a civil wedding, and an extravagant reception in Ouagadougou. Issouf pretended to be deeply involved in the planning, but the truth was that he contributed nothing. 0 francs CFA. Every detail, from the special champagne glasses to the imported lace wrappers for his mother-in-law and her sisters, came from Alassan's wallet. The wedding day arrived and Ouagadougou was sure it had never seen anything like it before. The buffet tables groaned with jollof rice, grilled tilapia, roasted chicken, and gallons of pisab juice. Then, 2 live bands competed loudly for attention. Guests were impressed and they exclaimed, "This Issouf boy has really made it oh. Look at all this money." Awa floated around in her white lace gown, while Fanta, her mother, walked like a queen, telling anyone who cared to listen, "This is only small money. My in-law has houses in Abidjan." By the end of the night, Awa thought she had secured her dream life. She looked at Issouf as they danced slowly and whispered in his ear, "I told you, my love, we'll manage your empire together." Issouf smiled, nodded, and thought to himself, "If only you knew which empire you just entered." After the wedding, Issouf took Awa to a guest house in town, which was owned by his brother. They had their honeymoon there, but 2 weeks later, the honeymoon glow began to fade and Awa waited eagerly for the day Issouf would finally take her to their mansion, the one he always boasted about. But whenever she asked, he kept postponing. "Ma chérie, relax. The mansion is under renovation. I cannot allow my queen to sleep where paint smell would disturb her royal nose. Just 2 more weeks." However, 2 weeks later, when Awa asked again, Issouf coughed dramatically, held his chest and said, "The workers made a small mistake with the ties, but don't worry, perfection takes time." One Thursday morning, Issouf woke Awa early and announced, "Pack your bags, we are moving." Awa's heart leaped. She imagined going to a big house with marble floors, tall windows, and a big kitchen where she would host dinner parties. But when they finally arrived at the so-called mansion, she almost fainted. It wasn't a mansion. It was a tiny one-room apartment at the back of Alassan's compound, wedged between the security post and the storage shed. Awa stared in disbelief. "Issouf, where's the mansion?" Issouf smiled nervously. "This is temporary, my love. Just for 2 weeks until the big house is ready." Awa tried to believe him, but it was hard not to doubt. There was no air conditioner, no generator, no fancy furniture, just one old mattress, a small table, and a bulb that flickered like candle. On their first night there, Awa couldn't sleep. She kept turning, sweating, and wondering why the temporary place didn't have as much as a fan. Unfortunately, that night, she heard laughter outside. 2 maids were gossiping loudly. "So, this is the new madam, the one who married our errand boy." The other maid laughed. "Yes, so she thought she married a rich man." Unknown to her that Issouf is the one we usually send to buy cement and fix tires for Alassan. Awa froze. Errand boy? No, it couldn't be true. But reality came crashing down the next morning when Alassan summoned Issouf to the main house. Awa followed him behind quietly and overheard the shouting. Alassan was furious. "I warned you. I told you not to deceive that girl. Now she thinks she married a millionaire, but all you own is 1 pair of sandals." Issouf pleaded, "Grand frère, please lower your voice. She will hear." Alassan screamed, "Let her hear. You are an errand boy, Issouf. An errand boy. Every shirt you wear belongs to me. Every kobo you spend comes from me. And instead of focusing on work, you spend your days spraying borrowed money at clubs like a drunk politician." Awa felt her knees weaken. She ran back to their room, shut the door, and cried until her chest ached. That evening, she confronted Issouf. So it is true? You don't own the cars, the house, even the ring? Isuf knelt down dramatically. Awa, my love, please, I did it for us. I wanted you to choose me. I knew you wouldn't look at me if I came as a poor man. But don't worry, success is coming. I can feel it in my bones. Awa wanted to scream, but she couldn't. She thought about the huge wedding, the way her mother had bragged to everyone, and the way her old schoolmates envied her. Living now would make her the biggest laughingstock in town. So, against her better judgment, she stayed. But from that day, she began watching Isuf closely. And what she discovered next would make her regret ever saying yes, because every single day in the tiny one-room apartment was a daily reality check for her. Gone were the soft promises, the endless sweet talks, and the Instagram perfect dates. Instead, now, she woke up every morning to the sound of chickens screaming in the neighbor's yard and the smell of diesel from Alasan's generator, while she sat on a wooden chair, staring at her life like a bad Nollywood trailer. She would even wash plates outside under the sun because there was no sink in the kitchen. At first, Awa tried to convince herself that this was still temporary, that Isuf's promise of big deals and contracts would eventually come true. But as time went on, she became sure that Isuf had no plans of even standing on his own. Everything they had, the clothes, the house, and the food in their plates, came from his elder brother Alasan. Every morning, Isuf disappeared into the main house, claiming to have business meetings, but Awa knew better now. She had watched him through the kitchen window one afternoon, standing in the driveway, helping the driver wash Alasan's SUV. Her heart sank, and that was the day it fully dawned on her that she had married the family's errand boy, and by extension, she no longer belonged to Isuf alone. She now belonged to the entire Zongo household. As such, whenever Alasan's wife Hadiza snapped her fingers, Awa had no choice but to respond. At first, Hadiza would ask sweetly, "Awa, please run to the shop and get detergent for the maids. You know where they keep the spare cash, right?" Then it became bolder. "Awa, the children want freshly made juice. Help Amina in the kitchen. She has too much on her hands today." Soon, it wasn't even only Hadiza. The maids joined in, the driver joined in, and even the gardener called out her name one day when he needed help carrying heavy buckets. It became worse that gossip began to follow her wherever she went in the compound. She once overheard one maid telling another, "So, this is the madam that thought she married a big man. Look at her fetching water with us." The other maid laughed. "Shh, be careful." But it is true. Alasan's wife is the real queen here. This one, she's just Hadiza's handbag. Awa pretended not to hear them, but each word felt like a stone thrown at her chest. One Friday evening, she gathered her courage and approached Isuf. He was lying on the bed, scrolling through his phone. "Isuf, I can't live like this. People are laughing at me. Even Hadiza, the way she treats me." Isuf frowned. "Hadiza feeds us, Awa. She buys our food. She pays the bills. Show some respect." Awa stared at him in disbelief. "Respect? I am your wife, Isuf. Why should your brother's wife have this much power over me? Where is your pride as a man?" Isuf threw his phone aside angrily. "Pride doesn't pay rent. See, until my deals come true, this is our reality. So stop complaining before you make things even worse." Awa swallowed her words, but inside, her respect for him totally vanished. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, and tears rolled down her cheeks. The glamorous wedding, the expensive promises, and the laughter from her mother, all of it had led her here, sleeping in a cramped room while her brother-in-law's wife treated her like one of the maids. By the 4th month, Awa was no longer just an errand wife inside the compound. The entire neighborhood now knew her story. one afternoon when she went to the nearby shop to buy onions for the cook. As she stood at the counter, she overheard two women gossiping loudly. You know that new bride living in Alasan's boys' quarter? The second woman laughed. The one that thought she married a rich man? Isuf is just an errand boy now. The only money in his pockets comes from Alasan's charity. Awa's cheeks burned hot, but she paid for the onions and walked home quickly. Now, as if the humiliation wasn't enough, a new disaster arrived at the compound gates the following week. Two angry debt collectors stormed into the compound shouting Isuf's name. Where is that man? He owes us 350,000 CFA. Today, he must pay or he's going to the police. Hadiza came out onto the balcony in a silk robe, sipping juice as she watched. Her lips curled into a mocking smile. Oh, Isuf, so you are borrowing money again? In this house where my husband feeds you? Interesting. The maids and workers all gathered and the compound became a stage, while Awa stood at the center drowning in humiliation. Isuf tried to explain, but Alasan cut him off sharply. From today, I am done. I will not pay another franc for you. You are always bringing shame to this family. You wanted to live like a big man, right? Now, face your debts like one. That night, Awa sat on their bed staring at her disgrace of a husband as he sat beside her mumbling stuffs about deals and second chances. She finally spoke to him. I left my father's house believing I was walking into a better life. Instead, I became an errand wife in your brother's compound. Even the maids send me on errands now, Isuf. This is not what you promised me. For the first time, he had no reply. He just buried his face in his hands. Awa continued enduring her harsh reality until her mother Fanta entered the picture. The first time Fanta heard the gossip, she thought it was jealousy. How could anyone dare laugh at her daughter, the same daughter who had married into the wealthy Zongo family? But by the 6th month of Awa's marriage, the news had spread all over their town. Awa's aunties started calling Fanta one after another. Fanta, we heard something. Oh, people are saying Isuf isn't the rich man you claimed. Is it true that your daughter is living in the boys' quarter, that she washes plates with the maids? Fanta's throat went dry, but she laughed it off. Salimata, ignore them. My daughter married money itself. Don't believe village gossip. However, when the 2nd, 3rd and 4th calls came in, Fanta couldn't ignore it anymore. She packed her bags and arrived in Ouagadougou unannounced, determined to see the palace life for herself. The first shock came when she saw the compound. Awa was standing outside, bent over a bucket, scrubbing clothes with bare hands. The moment Awa looked up and saw her mother, she froze in slow shame. Fanta dropped her handbag instantly. Awa, what is this? Why are you washing clothes? Where is your maid? Awa swallowed hard. Mama, there is no maid. I do everything myself. Fanta's chest rose and fell as she scanned the compound. The boys' quarters where Awa lived stood small and lonely behind the grand main house where Alasan and Hadiza lived like royalty. Before Awa could stop her, Fanta stormed into the main house angrily. Hadiza was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her phone when Fanta barged in and shouted, "So, this is how you treat my daughter? The same daughter you dragged from my home with promises of wealth and respect? You turned her into your maid?" Hadiza didn't even flinch. She placed her phone down carefully, crossed her legs and smiled. "Madam, please lower your voice. Nobody dragged Awa here. She married Isuf, not me. If her husband cannot provide for her, what exactly do you want me to do? Give her my place?" Fanta's hands shook as she pointed at her, but before she could respond, Alasan walked in. He faced her. "Madam, control yourself. This is my house, and in this house, we live according to what people can afford. If Awa wanted the life of a queen, she should have married a king. Instead, she married my younger brother, the errand boy. The words sliced Fanta like a blade. Her body trembled, but her pride held her upright. She turned to Awa. So it is true, you brought me shame. After all my boasting in the village, you brought me here to be mocked. Awa bowed her head low in humiliation. That night, Fanta refused to sleep. She sat upright on the small bed in Awa's small room, angrily burning like fire. Awa watched as her mother muttered angrily beside her, and her heart broke. She knew she had to do something. She could no longer wait for Isuf to save her dignity, as if he even had any to give. She decided to take actions. When her mother heard of her plan, she mocked her at first. Awa, you want to start selling pepper and seasoning cubes? Is this how you will restore our name? But Awa ignored her and started anyway. She would no longer spend her nights crying. Before, she would cry every night into her pillow, while Isuf slept like a man without shame. She cried for the life she thought she was entering, for the dignity she had lost, and for the way Hadiza, her brother-in-law's wife, clicked her fingers and sent her on errands like a housemaid. But never again. And so, while Isuf spent his days running errands for his elder brother Alassane, fixing tires, delivering business documents, and following drivers around, Awa started something small and secret. She borrowed 30,000 CFA from Miriam, her childhood friend, and began buying kitchen spices and ingredients from the local markets in bulk. She would then package them neatly and sell them online through an Instagram page she created called Awa's Kitchen Baskets. She didn't tell Isuf about this, and every sale she made, she saved it into a hidden mobile money account under a fake name, Madam Rahinatu. At first, she sold only to Miriam's friends, then slowly, other people started to buy too. The money wasn't much, but it gave Awa something she had lost for months, a sense of control. Meanwhile, Isuf's debts had begun to pile up, with Alassane refusing to give him extra cash and Hadiza openly mocking him at every chance. Isuf was under pressure. One evening, he came home looking defeated. Awa, I need your help. I just need 50,000 CFA for a business deal. When it clicks, we will make 500,000 CFA back. Awa pretended to be shocked. Where will I find that kind of money to give you? Isuf frowned. I thought you saved something from the wedding contributions. Awa blinked twice. The same contributions you used to impress your friends at the club? No, Isuf, there is nothing left. His eyes darkened, but Awa said nothing more. 2 weeks later, Hadiza delivered the final blow. One Saturday morning, she called Awa into the main house. Awa entered, wiping her hands on her wrapper, only to find Hadiza's friend seated elegantly in the living room, holding glasses of wine. Hadiza smiled sweetly. Ladies, this is Awa, Isuf's wife. She helps us manage small errands here and there. She's practically family. The women turned their eyes and scanned Awa from head to toe, secretly hiding amusement. One of them muttered loudly enough for Awa to hear. So, this is the bride who married the wrong Zongo brother. They laughed as Hadiza continued. Awa, please run to the tailor's shop and collect my clothes. Tell her to iron it before you return. Quickly, please. Awa stood there, calmly fighting her tears back. But she didn't argue or complain. She simply turned and left. But as she walked back to the boys' quarters, she decided that she would work harder to be independent, so she would no longer depend on Isuf, Alassane or Hadiza. And then, 3 months later, her packaged spice business had gone from a few weekly orders to steady sales every single day. She had even saved enough to rent a small shop at the market. But she kept her plans a secret until everything came crashing down for Isuf. One Wednesday morning, 3 angry debt collectors stormed into the Zongo compound. They shouted so loudly that even Hadiza came out onto the balcony to watch the drama. The first debt collector shouted furiously, Isuf, you owe us 700,000 CFA. Today you must pay or we will rip you apart. The compound went silent and Hadiza folded her arms smugly, enjoying the chaos. Isuf begged them for more time, swearing he had a big deal coming. But the collectors laughed in his face. Finally, they turned to Alassane, who had come out, hoping he would intervene as usual. But this time, Alassane was cold and serious. I warned him. I will not pay another franc for him. If you wish, you can devour him. The angry men immediately dragged Issoufou away and gave him the beating of his life before finally handing him over to the police. That night, Awa walked straight into the main house, ignoring the gossip of the maids and the smirk on Hadiza's face. She went into Alassane's office and spoke directly to him. Grand Frere, thank you for everything you've done for us, but from today, I will take responsibility for myself and my actions. I won't depend on this house anymore. Alassane stared at her, surprised by her sudden composure. Hadiza raised an eyebrow, expecting Awa to beg as usual, but Awa simply walked out without waiting for a response. 2 weeks later, she moved into a small apartment she rented with her own savings. Her spice business became a steady source of income and she focused entirely on rebuilding her life. After 2 weeks of being detained and barely escaping torture, Issoufou was bailed by Alassane. He came out and went after Awa, begging for forgiveness, but Awa was done being the powerless errand wife who waited for dignity to be handed to her. She had learned the hardest truth that, in this life, nobody respects the powerless, and from that day, she decided she would never be powerless again. Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. Give the story a thumbs up and share the story out with your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!